Starliner Media.
Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell.
All right, it's time once again for Music Night at the Majestic, and with us again, friend of Music Night, Mr. Bill Lloyd. Bill, welcome back.
Hello, Michael.
Good to talk to you as always.
And me, you too. I always enjoy our chats. So
that's great to hear. I truly appreciate that. So I got to tell you, the album we're going to talk about, the very first time I met you, which was back in 1990. Yeah, I interviewed you and Radney for a radio show I was doing, and afterwards,
and we were all 12. How did that happen?
I could barely hold on to the Marantz recorder. But that night, you were telling me, actually, that part of the interview, but just when we were just hanging out talking afterwards, you were telling me about how you had just recorded tracks on Carl Perkins. And right. I thought, the stories I was just in awe of, because I'm a huge Carl Perkins fan. So is, part of me, honestly, Bill, was jealous that you got to hang out and play with them and I didn't.
I would be jealous of me too for that. It was quite an opportunity, kind of came out of the blue. Well, not completely out of the blue, but Radney and I had been doing some shows opening for Carl. And we played in New York, Atlanta, Kansas City, and Houston, to my memory. Those are the ones that I can remember. There may be another somewhere in there. But anyway, and this was 1990, and it was a good fit. We would open the show, and he would call us up to play on his set and sing some harmony. He would do the song "Your True Love." That song, "Your Love," and then background vocals go, "Your Love," and those are in harmony. So we would do that part. But it was just it was really great getting to know him and do those shows with him. And then he had a manager who was working also with the Judds and RCA. And I don't know, what we were doing, what Radney and I was doing, was a lot closer to rockabilly, and so his manager at that time reached out to me and said, would you be interested in doing some demos with Carl and see if we can get something kind of closer to what Carl might do for country radio, which is kind of what Radney and I had done. And I said, you're kidding me. So my heart in my throat, I drove down to Jackson, Tennessee, and was there, and I spent the weekend with he and his family. He had a pool house, had this nice pool on his patio, and it kind of went into this covered pool house where half the thing was like a storage garage kind of place. The other half was the studio. And we did a bunch of demos in his studio. And it was 2 different weeks. Did one week and then I did another one later. And then eventually got a little bit of a budget and recorded some stuff in Nashville. So there were, about 10 tracks and all. And stuff, nothing happened with it. Carl's manager named Ken Stiltz, he and Carl split. And Ken also was managing the Judds, and that didn't last. So everything kind of blew up. And so as things do in the music business, which I've experienced a bunch of times over the years. And but anyway, it was like those tapes just didn't, languished, just dormant for a long time. And I just heard recently, this last year, a friend of mine who I used to write a lot of songs with, named Ben Vaughn, put this girl who works at Sun Records, and I thought, well, I thought Sun was dormant too. There was a family here in Nashville called the Singletons who bought it from Sam Phillips, who, of course, is the guy who invented rock and roll practically, and had Sun Records in Memphis. And he sold it to the Singletons, and that they did well with the catalog for years, and they did sign new acts. I think Orion was one of their biggest acts, if you remember that guy with the mask. But anyway, and then they finally sold it to this bigger company, and now Sun has been revamped and revitalized, and I mean, there's a lot of really good records being, like, not only reissues and new compilations, but new artists, or like artists is classic as Ian Hunter from Mott the Hoople, to a local band here, Steel Drivers, who are kind of a bluegrassy country hybrid band. Their new album was on Sun. So there's a lot of really good music being made. And anyway, these people reached out to me about these sides that I'd done with Carl, and one thing led to another, and the album's coming out. So 2 tracks already out now that are streaming online. One is, I'm just going to keep talking till you stop me.
Well, you know more about this than I do, so
I've not taken a breath, I don't think. The first track they released is John Hiatt song, Memphis In The Meantime. And John was really pleased with that. And they just...
I think I'd written you to interrupt. Yeah.
Please.
When I first heard it...
Stop me.
When I first saw it, you'd shared it. And I was like, wow, it sounds like John wrote this song for Carl. And I mean, he really, the way that you recorded it, Carl sang it like it was his, and it fit so well.
Well, I know John really is proud of it too. So which I feel like I did my job, there. Carl started off in the 50s with his brothers. It was almost like a family band. And, when I was working with him, it was a family band too. His son Greg was on bass, and his son Stan was on drums. And and they were on the road with him, and that's who we made the recordings with as well.
Yeah, so, I'll tell you, again, this is, I've had other people listen to a couple of the tracks, and the general response is, nobody can believe that these songs were recorded 35 years ago. Yeah, they say it sounds new. Yeah,
I like hearing that. That's nice to hear.
Yeah, well, their thing was, technologically, it doesn't sound dated.
Well, that's good.
More importantly, the production value isn't dated.
Well, thank you. I think the initial mix that we did on Memphis and 2 other songs had a little bit of that 80s gated reverb sound on them when we did them. And I went back in later, just a couple years after that, thinking something might be able to be done with those recordings, and took some of the 80s off of it. Some of the early, that sort of, drum sound that used to be out there. And so, yeah, I mean, I actually went back and tried to make sure it sounded, it's kind of you to say timeless, but, sound not so wrapped up in one period,
Yeah, well, sometimes having a record that sounds of its time works well.
Yeah.
Other stuff, the more rootsy it is,
and
the less favorable that is.
Exactly, and this is Carl Perkins we're talking about too. The second track that's out right now is something that we did back in his pool house. And, I'm not really an engineer, but unfortunately I was the engineer on this stuff. So we made it as good as we could make it. But it's called Some Things Never Change, and it's got just the sweetest melody, and his guitar playing throughout the whole project was great.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
that particular track, Bill, there's an innocence to it.
Yeah, it's very sweet, and very, I mean, the lyric, first line in the song is "Some things never change," and love is one of those. And the melody is so almost like a McCartney-ish kind of melody.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the last records Carl made before he passed was an album called Go Cat Go, and I don't know if you've ever seen it or heard it.
Mm-hmm.
You got it, or do you know it? He actually got to work with all the great people that he influenced. And so there's, John Lennon was gone by that time, but Paul McCartney and George Harrison actually went in the studio with him and did stuff. And then he worked with Paul Simon, Tom Petty. I mean, it's a really great record. And he sounded pretty vital on that stuff too. So he really, I think as an artist, Carl gets the short shift, as they say, because, I mean, I don't know, Roy got to do the Traveling Wilburys, and Johnny Cash is an icon, Elvis super icon, and those were the other three members of the $1 Million Quartet. And Carl just tends to not get near as much credit as I think he deserves, because he was a great songwriter, he was a great guitar player, and a real great singer, and just good live. He was a great live performer. He just had it all, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah. Well, the other thing with there's so many versions of his songs that people don't realize. Like you mentioned, Your True Love. Brian Setzer with the orchestra on their first album did a version of Your True Love.
Yeah,
and
it's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if you wouldn't, most people wouldn't associate a swing orchestra doing a Carl Perkins song.
Understandable. Yeah.
But it works great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone knows Blue Suede Shoes. That to me is, that's the shot heard around the world, as they say,
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, the Beatles also did Honey Don't, Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby, and Matchbox.
Mm-hmm.
So just the fact that he's got 3 other Beatle cuts, and then, even more when you get into the whole BBC and Hamburg tapes and all those things, that when they were, they loaded their set up with Carl Perkins. It was, he was a beloved guy to those guys. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he got the people that he did on that Go Cat Go album, he had, like I said, Paul Simon, Tom Petty, John Fogerty, all these people lining up to work with Carl. So,
yeah, and he got to fight David Bowie in a movie.
Yes, he did. Great story about that, by the way. They were getting, they had a stuntman do the fight. Nobody wanted to see anybody get hurt. And he told me this story. And actually, I was talking to Stan, his son Stan, on the phone, who actually reminded me of it just the other day. And John Landis was the producer of this movie. And Carl was supposed to be this kind of heavy who fights David Bowie. And they had a stand-in. And the hair person was saying, I can't get this guy's hair to look like Carl's hair. And, Carl had this really silver tight wig kind of thing that was like a, curly headed, but also kind of a pompadour at the same time. And he said, well, if you like this, I've got another one out in the car. and cracked Landis up. And, he was going to give that to the stand-in. So, anyway, but there are wonderful Carl stories. One that Stan told me was that Carl was such a regular guy. He'd be out mowing his own lawn, and people would drive by and they'd say, "Is this Carl Perkins' house?" And he'd be having like sunglasses and a hat on. Nobody would know. He goes, "Yeah, it is." And he goes, "Is he around?" "Oh, no, I don't think he's around right now." And and he's like, just kind of. And finally, this lady goes, "Well, how much do you charge to cut his lawn? Because I live over here." He goes, "Well, ma'am, I don't know. I've got kind of a special deal here." She goes, "Well, what is?" He goes, "I get to sleep with the lady in the house." And finally, she got the joke. And, "Oh, are you Carl Perkins?" "Yes, ma'am." But that's a great story, right?
Uh-huh.
I get to sleep with the lady who lives there.
Speaking of that lady, I remember you telling me about breakfast.
Oh, well, yeah. When I was that was another fun thing about being at his house. They just took me in, it's like, felt like part of the family, they had me in the guest room, and how surreal is it to be in the guest room, waking up in the morning and hear a knock at the door, goes, "Bill, Valda's got breakfast on." It's like, what world am I living in? It was rarefied air for sure. And it was a real treat to get to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now, it's like, these are good stories I could have told anytime. But now with this record coming out, it leads a little more validity. It has a little more validity, the stories do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before you were talking about, Carl's vocals on the track Miss Muddy.
Yeah.
He's really into singing that song.
Oh, he was a great performer. And, that's one of the tracks that we did not pick that song in advance. He just started playing it. And I was setting up mics and just trying to get so we could capture this thing. And he said, "Bill, you're playing electric on this too." And so I was like, had to grab my guitar out of a case. And so I think we ran it down they were just playing it, and I was watching them to see how it went. And then the one that's on the record, I think it was take 2, and I'm playing one of the electrics on it. And I don't know how much of that lyric was off the top of his head, and how much of it was something that he had been working on for a while. But Stan told me that the song "Silver and Gold" that Dolly Parton had a hit with had been written between waking up in the morning and seeing the change on the floor after he'd already put his pants on, had fallen out of the pocket, and he didn't feel like picking it up. And he goes, "Whatever, it's just silver and gold." And he had, there's a song. And by the time he got into the den, he'd written a verse.
Wow.
That's what Stan told me. And so, and I thought, and I believe him. I think it's a really, from what I saw, that's the way Carl's mind worked, and he was a good writer.
Mm-hmm.
So that song, "Some Things Never Change," which is the single that's out right now, is one of those kind of songs that feels like just classic songwriting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like a standard, but
yeah.
The thing that captures me on it is there's just that innocence to the song that just really captures you.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something we really need in our lives these days.
Yep.
I feel like a little bit of sweetness and light, in dark times. So
yeah. Now the opening track, "Baby Bye Bye."
Yeah.
Was that one that he'd had for a while, or was that?
I don't know when he wrote it. The album starts with that song, and the album ends with that song. So the last track at the end of the album is the demo version, which we cut in Jackson. And then the opening track on the album is the one we did in Nashville. And that's me on acoustic kicking it off. And I'm singing harmony with him on that. So that was nice for me. And but that's one of my favorites too, because it's just really catchy. I thought it was like as catchy as anything he ever wrote. So
yeah. Now what the second track, "Don't You Know I Love You"?
Yeah, that was one that I remember the boys really liked that one a lot, and it featured a guy named Joe Schenk, who was the piano player that they were working with at the time, and they wanted to showcase the piano, and so kind of getting away from just the regular rockabilly guitars all the time, have sort of introduced a new sound, and so the piano kind of was the forefront there, and. Lyrically, it's not one of my favorite ones out there, but on the other hand, it has a great groove, and it showcases his singing, and it showcases the band really well.
Yeah, and then "Heart of My Heart" is another interesting track.
Yeah, now that one is the one that song had been pitched to them, and it wasn't one of the ones I picked out for them. But they were really hot on it. And I looked at the list of writers, and one of the guys was a friend of mine, Bill Kenner. And I thought, well, let me give this a listen. I knew it. Now, once I saw Bill's name on there, I went, well, give me a listen. And it has a real almost Southern rock kind of feel, which and the way that Stan's playing drums and just the general groove of it is closer to like a Southern rock kind of thing. And I don't know. It was an experiment, It's not one of the ones we did in Nashville. It's just one of the demos we had done in Jackson, but I'm glad it's on there.
Yeah. Well, then, Where Does Love Go is kind of that, the country era of Carl's career.
Yeah. And he was always that, even his Sun records. One of the first records on Sun was the song Sure to Fall that the Beatles covered. Ringo covered it later, and a lot of people covered that one. And it's from that same vibe. And, and it sounds classic too. It has a lot of classic songwriting kind of, even though it's very country, it does have that. I played some acoustic guitar parts on that, I remember, that were a little different from what Carl usually did. So,
yeah. Now, how did you come to record "Get Rhythm"?
Oh, that was one I always loved. He'd been Johnny Cash's guitar player all throughout the '60s, after Luther Perkins had passed away.
Right.
And he had worked with Carl in the beginning. And this is kind of interesting. Johnny was battling drugs, and Carl was battling drink. And so they leaned on each other in those years. And that's something I wouldn't have been really comfortable talking about, but I think for most fans of Carl and Johnny, it's all been out there for a number of years now, and people know about it. So I don't feel like I'm doing any sort of back talk, I think everybody kind of knows that they were really public about their issues, and they were been longtime friends, and they really leaned on each other. And so with Johnny, he was a new Perkins, not Luther, but Carl Perkins, playing guitar for him and touring with him, and stayed with him quite a while. Wrote the song. Carl wrote "Daddy Sang Bass, Mom Sang Tenor." And so that was kind of a hit for Johnny. And, then Carl had a hit of his own called "Restless" in the late '60s. But he still continued to play with Johnny for a number of years. And anyway, so "Get Rhythm" is one of those songs that, it was a Johnny Cash song, but when Carl did an album with NRBQ, they did that song. So it was just, and this version that we cut was a different groove. It was like kind of a slower, funkier kind of vibe than the revved up rockabilly kind of vibe. So
yeah. Tell me, is there any other memories you have of recording there in the pool house? Yeah,
I remember once really laboring over a mix, and I was out there till almost midnight, hadn't gone to bed yet, and Carl came out to check on me. And and he was super nice to me, going, Bill, I think you got this thing sounding really good, And I was working on the tape echo. I want it to sound just like the Sun. He goes, you got it just like Sam had it. I think he was blowing smoke, Michael, but
but you were going to take it.
I was going to take it to bed with me that night. He just said, you've been out here a long time, but I was really just trying to get it right, wanted to do a good job for him, because I'm not really an engineer, I was just trying to make sure it all sounded good enough for us to be able to get into a real studio and do some more.
Yeah, that had to make you feel good, though.
Yeah. But I think some of the stuff sounds pretty good, despite the fact that it was me engineering, The first 3 tracks on this the album is called Some Things Never Change. It comes out October 24th on Sun Records, which is just amazing. And then, but the first 3 songs on the album are recorded in Nashville, and the rest are recorded at Carl's pool house behind his split level ranch home, that was really in Jackson, where he cut his own lawn.
And had benefits.
Yeah, and with benefits.
Tell me this, Bill, is there anything else you want to make sure we touch on regarding your recording, Carl, for Some Things Never Change?
We've covered a lot already. It seems like I think we're okay. I hope people who are fans of rockabilly music will go find this record, and it's already available for pre-order. So if you go to Sun Records website, or Sun Records website, as I'm prone to say, then you can find a way to pre-order it. So the minute it drops, all the music business vernacular,
exactly.
Our single drops, but as soon as it happens, they'll get it to you in the mail. So
yeah, well, as I said, when I saw you had shared Memphis in the Meantime.
Yeah,
I immediately remembered you telling me these stories back shortly after you had recorded it.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that is too cool for me personally.
Hopefully they haven't changed. The stories haven't changed that much, because
No.
a number of years have gone by, and you know how stories are.
If they've changed, then my memory changed because you're telling them as I remember them. So
okay, that's good. Because I'm trying not to elaborate too much or anything, but
yeah. But all right, Bill, we'll tell you what, on that note, we'll bring this one to a close. We've had sunrecords.com scrolling throughout the show.
Oh, thank you so much.
As your website as well. So folks can get your body of work in addition to Carl's Some Things Never Change. So, but as always, I appreciate you taking the time to join me here on Music Night.
I appreciate it so much, Michael. Thank you.
Not a problem. So, all right, everybody. On that note, we're going to bring this one to a close. We appreciate you spending your time with us. Have a good night.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.